Oh, we should be live. Check, check.
Testing. I hope so.
Testing.
Yeah.
So I'm just testing if everybody can hear us. So give me 1 minute to get a confirmation. Testing, testing. We are all good. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Live. Okay.
Nice. So hi everybody. Thanks for joining our third behind the scenes. And this event is actually super special because we've scheduled quite some time to discuss all the developments in detail. And hey Jesse, thanks for joining again.
Really excited to be here, especially with the paper going live. Hope everybody in the community has seen the Energy WebEx paper. I know Daniel, you were working hard on that. I was working hard on that. It's funny. It kind of feels like we were sitting on that for like months, and we just hadn't put all the information in one place. So
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, Jesse, let's start with the basics and like really the basics. How would you describe Energy Web and what is Energy Web becoming in the future? Do you see Energy Web as a software house with multiple applications and use cases? Like what is your vision there?
So I think a software house is a great description for what Energy Web is. We're incorporated as an international nonprofit based in Switzerland. And really, our story is pretty simple. We build digital solutions to help accelerate the energy transition. That is to basically help the global economy transition from one based on fossil fuels to one based on renewables and efficiency. So yeah, I think like you said, Daniel, we're a software house really narrowly focused on the energy sector. And we're really focused on that general theme of decarbonization and things like renewable energy for newcomers to the event today.
And what are some of the primary challenges the energy companies and our members are facing? Can you give the audience a high level overview of the solutions and how we are helping them?
Yeah. So for newcomers, first, welcome. Thanks for coming to this event. And I'll just kind of start from basics. So we as Energy Web, again, focused on decarbonization, focused on renewables. We're really focused on solving two unique sets of problems in two very specific areas. And by the way, in the light paper that Daniel and I were just talking about, a description of what I'm about to offer is in there. So feel free to go check it out, especially if you're a newcomer to the community. So the first challenge has to do with these things called distributed energy resources. And when I use that language, and Daniel and I are going to talk about it quite a bit today, so distributed energy resources, that means things like electric vehicles, charging points where you plug in your car to charge, rooftop solar systems, batteries. Some people on the line probably have heat pumps in their houses to help with heating or cooling. So all of those different assets that I'm describing, we actually have the opportunity to network together all of those different assets and use them together to basically help balance the grid instead of what we do today, which is having people in a very centralized manner crank up and down thermal power plants, so things like natural gas facilities or coal power plants in some places of the world. But if we can basically help balance the grid using all of these distributed energy resources instead of those big, large thermal facilities, it's a much more efficient way to run our energy systems. It's cheaper and it's cleaner. There's less carbon. So there's a bunch of benefits. The problem is most utilities, they don't have the ability to do that. This concept of networking together lots of different assets, forming digital relationships with them, sending them messages, exchanging data between them, those are very new set of capabilities for electric utilities. And so that's the first area where we as Energy Web zoom right in and try and help them. We have two solutions focused on that. One is called asset management and one is called data exchange. And we bring those solutions to electric utilities in different places in the world to help them unlock that kind of capability. Yep. So that's the first one. And
So
for newcomers
just
to the
just one question.
ecosystem,
One
yeah.
question. Are we talking to them on a day-to-day base? Like how
Oh
does
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah. I mean if you want to get up for for that use case for this topic around distributed energy
Yeah.
resources, it's unlike many other Web3 projects, right? Ours is focused on enterprise. So we work with businesses. So that means there are people on our team on the phone, on Zoom, in person with IT people and energy sector experts within large enterprises, collecting requirements from them, passing those requirements to our technology teams. And then we're building open source repositories and then deploying that open source technology with these companies. So we're talking to these companies regularly. We're a nonprofit, but they are our customers. So we serve them. We just happen to use open source tech and be focused on a really specific sector of the economy. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the first area. Very briefly on the second area that is a little bit different. If you look around today, everybody's talking about like ESG, right? And everybody's talking about some of these different low or negative carbon products. So carbon credits are talked about a lot, right? There are other things in the US called renewable energy certificates. There are these things called 24/7 matched renewable energy solutions. So it's a different way to purchase renewables. There's hydrogen is very much being talked about as another fuel that can be produced in a low or zero carbon way. So there's all of these different low or negative carbon kind of products that are coming to market under this broad umbrella of the energy transition. But most of those products and supply chains are new. There's not a lot of transparency around them in terms of where are all these different products being generated from, who's buying them, who's selling them. And that's the other area where we have a solution called Green Proofs. And we apply that solution to that area to help market participants, again, under this broad umbrella of the energy transition, really understand and have greater visibility into where those different products are, what different components were inserted to them in different spots of their life cycle. And we have examples of that. We've done a lot of work on things like sustainably produced Bitcoin, right, as one of those products. We launched a registry that we'll talk about today on sustainable aviation fuel. So that's fuel that's made from low carbon sources instead of barrels of oil. And we basically applied a green proof solution to that area. So anyway, those are the two areas, again, for newcomers. One, very much on the electric grid and giving utilities a totally different way to balance the grid. And the other one is more on these new suite of green products that we try and help bring a lot of transparency to.
Awesome. And then, so one question is popping up right now. Does our token play a role in the solutions as well?
Yeah, so everything I just described, whether it's on the green proof side or on the DER side, those solutions are powered today by the Energy Web Chain and EWT. So Energy Web Token, or EWT, used every day to interact with the Energy Web Chain. And actually, as we're going to discuss, I think today, Daniel, just as a part of this conversation,
yes,
Energy Web X, which was described in the light paper today, and the worker node networks that are a part of that, that's going to bring an entire new series of different utilities to the Energy Web Token. So that's what's coming this year.
Yeah, so we will dive into that in a second. Let's first talk about we open sourced last week. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had open sourced the Worker Node Toolkit. So this is a new technology and concept for the Energy Web community. And in the press release, you said this, and let me check because I quote. So you said the most powerful Web3 tech Energy Web has encountered to date to help energy companies solve real business problems. So tell us, what has you so excited about the Worker Nodes?
Yeah, and sorry, my dog is barking in the
No
back.
worries.
He should stop in a second. Awesome. So yeah, look, we as Energy Web have been experimenting for years with different ways to use Web3 technologies to solve problems for energy companies. Longtime followers of Energy Web will know that we construct a lot of our solutions around that concept of self-sovereign identity and decentralized identifiers.
Yeah.
And now those technologies are really a part of all our applications. But using self-sovereign identity, it's really just another identity and access management solution if you're an enterprise. It's not some like massive transformation of a business process. But worker nodes, so what we open sourced a few weeks ago, I think they are. And so basically, over the past 5 years, working, like you asked about, Daniel, day to day with these different energy companies, we've encountered some pretty unique circumstances where companies that kind of each, they're individual separate companies and they each have their own IT systems. But what we find out is that they actually need to exchange and process some really granular and sensitive data in a way that actually the public can verify. So it's a very unique set of requirements. You've got all these different companies. They've got private data that to support some application, again, our applications, green proofs, using distributed energy resources to balance the grid. In order for those applications to work, a lot of different businesses need to exchange and process, in most cases, what is private data. Yep.
Yeah.
So worker nodes, what we open sourced, that's our solution to those requirements. And if I maybe put on like a Web 2 hat, instead of data from all those different companies being dumped into some central repository, and then in that kind of central repository, which is basically a black box, some work being performed on that data, we take a totally different approach, because that approach of taking all that data, putting it into a central repository has all kinds of risks. That data could be resold, it could be compromised in some way. How do you actually verify to the public what work is being performed on that data? You can't. So this is what we're cracking with worker nodes. So in our world, instead of data from all these different companies, and in some cases data from individual like assets, that data isn't put into a central repository. It's actually sent to a decentralized network of what we call worker nodes. And then a specific piece of work is applied on that data. And when I say work, and we'll talk through some examples in a second, it's basically just like business logic that's being done on that data, and then the results of that logic are communicated publicly. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of people on the line right now that are big in crypto and blockchain and Web3. You might think what I'm describing with these worker node networks kind of sounds a lot like a blockchain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're actually not, right? So these worker node networks, think of thousands of computers that are all executing the same, for Bitcoin, for example, proof of work protocol. So that's what the blockchain behind Bitcoin is doing. But in our world, these worker nodes are not blockchains. They're just a collection of computers and servers that are executing a really specific piece of work that solves problems for energy companies. And so basically, in summary, this worker node concept, we can protect data privacy for all these different companies. We can prevent a central entity from gobbling up or reselling some potentially sensitive business information. And I'd say most importantly, we can enable the public to verify the results of some piece of computational work.
Yeah. And could you give some examples of specific stuff a worker node could do?
Yeah. So let me first talk about this concept of 24/7 matched renewable energy. So first, just on the concept, then about how worker nodes help there. So 24/7, basically the way companies purchase renewables today in many parts of the world is they sort of say, okay, over this year, I've used this much electricity. And then on the other side, they purchase what are called certificates. So these are digital certificates. In some cases, they're actually not digital. It's like a PDF. I guess you could call that digital, but they'll then purchase certificates from a series of renewable energy facilities that roughly match up to how much energy they used over the course of the year. Many corporates, good examples here are Google, Microsoft, have said, you know what, that annual approach to purchasing renewables, it's not creating any impact. What they have started to do is say, look, here's a data center. It's in this part of the grid. Here's in close to real time how much carbon that data center is responsible for. And then they will purchase renewables that are matched 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to basically match the electricity consumption of their buildings or their data centers. So that's this concept of 24/7. The trick is, how do you actually verify that companies are actually purchasing renewables from these different assets? There are a variety of really slick looking user interfaces and web pages that a lot of companies use to show, hey, look, here's a building, here's a wind farm and a solar farm over here. Trust my user interface. That's where my energy is coming from, right? How do you verify that? You can't, because there is no solution for that. That's where worker nodes come in. So basically what we've done is deployed a worker node network that conducts matching of renewables. So you have data coming in one side about power from buildings. You've got data coming in the other side about power from these renewable energy facilities. And the work of the nodes is to just match A and B, so both sides of that equation, and provide that proof to the public. So I think that's a pretty good example.
Yeah. And you've also talked about a work with Parity Technologies and the Web3 Foundation previously. Will EnergyWeb-X then be a parachain? And what relay chain will EnergyWeb-X be deployed on?
Yeah, so as discussed, again, check out the paper because we put out answers to a lot of the questions that we got from the community. So look, EnergyWeb-X is right now in its first version a parachain that is connected to Rococo, which is the official test relay chain of the Polkadot and the Web3 Foundation ecosystem, right? And just to be really clear, all of the work that I was just talking about with that 24/7 example, it's going to be performed by the combination of these worker node networks and this new blockchain, Energy Web X. We've yet to decide which relay chain the Energy Web X parachain in a production environment is going to be connected to. That's why we're testing everything with everything connected to Rococo, and we'll have updates on that specific topic soon. But again, for clarity, we're working with enterprise customers, and we actually want to make it possible for them to achieve finality for these different solutions using any number of blockchains, right? If I were to walk in to a executive boardroom with an energy company and say, we'd love to work with you, but we can only use one specific piece of blockchain technology, I'll get laughed out of the room, right? That's not the way we work. So the whole point here with Energy Web X and with these worker nodes is to be able to spin up these different networks that are performing specific work. Near term, they'll be able to achieve finality on either the existing Energy Web chain or this new blockchain, Energy Web X. But basically, that's the vision here, is over time, we could even integrate these worker nodes and Energy Web X with other blockchains so that we can be truly kind of blockchain agnostic, even though, just for clarity for the audience, this year, we're really just focused on being able to achieve finality for these different applications on existing Energy Web chain, and then once it's live in a production environment, Energy Web X.
Awesome. And then, so the next question would be, who is going to govern the Energy Web X? Will the validators be the same as the Energy Web chain validators, or how does this structure work?
No, so it's not going to be the same validators, at least not initially. So Energy Web X governance is going to be pretty simple. It will be launched and maintained directly by Energy Web, and then our partner Eventus, who is helping us to actually launch and test all the functionalities we're talking about here with Energy Web X. And the idea there is we really need to make sure that this thing is working, that it can support an initial deployment of multiple different worker node networks. Yeah, so that's how we'll start. Now, over time, we need to decentralize governance of this Energy Web X blockchain to bring more security to the network. But I think, and there's some detail again on this in the light paper, so I'd encourage folks to check it out. It's important to remember that like validating Energy Web X is not intended to be some sort of a lucrative mining or validating opportunity. Like, just think again about these worker nodes, because just to really connect these two concepts, we have these different networks of worker nodes out here performing useful work for energy companies. They are anchored and secured by Energy Web X. So Energy Web X is a blockchain intended to coordinate all of these worker node networks. The networks are themselves, that's where the economic value is. Because again, you've got computers performing specific work for energy enterprises. So again, I'm not saying that the validation of Energy Web X is not important. It is crucial. There is a security component there. There is a trust component there. But most, if not all, of the action of what work is being performed, it's actually about these applications. It's not at the level of the blockchain.
Yeah, so let's talk about the action. What is the relationship between Energy Web tokens, worker nodes, and Energy Web X?
Yeah. So let's get into it, because this is key to the whole making this whole thing work. Actually, now that I think of it, the concept is really simple. If any individual or business wants to launch one of these worker node networks, or they want to run one of the worker nodes as part of the network, they need to stake Energy Web tokens. I mean, that's at the basic level. That is the most specific description I can offer at that basic level. So let's just take an example with the 24/7 use case we just talked through. Yeah. So let's say we have an energy company and they want to launch a worker node network to basically bring that public verifiability into a 24/7 use case like I just described. Yeah. So if they want to do that with what we're bringing to market here with these worker node networks and Energy Web X, Energy Web tokens will be needed to be used in I think 3 ways. And you can check me if I'm missing anything here, Daniel. But again, this is all in the paper, but I'll just describe it here. So first, if that business wants to launch a public worker node network, that company actually has to stake Energy Web tokens. So that's the first step. If you want to deploy a worker node network, you as an enterprise need to stake tokens. Second, that business, right, that's deploying that worker node network, they actually need to specify an award schedule so that individuals or businesses will actually earn revenue for running a worker node, right? And those awards can only be paid in Energy Web tokens. Yep. So that's the second way. The business, first, they got to stake tokens just to launch one of these networks. Second, they got to include some tokens that will be used as awards, because why would you or I run a worker node if we weren't being incentivized to do so? You wouldn't. Yep.
Yep.
Third, and this is the last piece, if you are an individual or a business that then sees, oh, that energy company posted a 24/7 matching worker node network, I would like to run one of those nodes and earn awards and support that application. I, or the individual or business that is running the node, also has to stake tokens. Yeah. So that's the connection. And again, this is a connection that to my knowledge, in any Web3 ecosystem doesn't really exist right now. If we can facilitate this environment whereby there are enterprise applications running out there, and you have a mix of individuals and businesses then staking tokens to power those applications, that's a much more direct economic link between the application itself and the technology and the token, which just doesn't really exist right now. Gas fees on Ethereum and other public blockchains is the closest proxy to something like that, right? Because you have to pay tokens in order to pay a gas fee. But what we're doing here, right, staking tokens, using tokens as awards for these nodes, and then having businesses pay those costs, that's a much tighter link between solutions and a crypto ecosystem.
And can a single worker node perform work for multiple projects, or is it a worker node per project?
So I wouldn't necessarily think about it quite like that. Individual Energy Web solutions, again, these green-proof solutions, asset management, the data exchange piece, they might actually need multiple worker node networks as part of that single solution. I can give an example. So some of the work that followers of the Energy Web community have likely seen us doing in Australia on this thing called Project Edge, we've actually scoped out multiple worker node networks in that part of the world. So one of them, we basically need worker nodes just to pseudonymize data coming in from all these different companies. Like that's one worker node network in and of itself, is pseudonymizing some very specific data. Separately, there's another worker node network that's needed to conduct some very specific work on data coming in from distributed energy resource companies and from electric utilities to basically run a local energy market there. So those are just in that example, we have one region, we have one application, two worker node networks, right? So that's how I'd think about it. Yeah.
And how many worker nodes do you expect to be necessary per project at a minimum?
That's tough to say, but let me actually answer a slightly different question if I can. You know, look, we're only engaging in projects and solutions with energy companies and consortia of companies that need this technology.
Okay.
Like, just to be really clear, you know, think about it. If a company or consortia of companies comes to us and it's clear that there's no need for sensitive data to be exchanged amongst some different businesses, if there's no need for that data to be private, and if there's no need for specific work to be performed on that data, and there's no need for public verifiability, why would they work with us, right? They can use, and companies can use any number of traditional information technology and Web 2-like solutions almost off the shelf. So again, every solution we work on is going to be using these worker nodes, because this is a key unlock of value using Web3 tech. Yeah.
Yeah. And what other criteria will there be to be trusted on a worker node? Like, is there a KYC, or who decides this?
Yeah. So the whole vision here is that the company who deploys the worker node network, they are in charge of governance of that network. So in the example I just walked through, right, the company that deployed that worker node network, they are the ones that can specify all requirements for running a worker node. That includes, they determine if they want KYC of different types and how, if they'll determine different staking thresholds in order to run those different nodes. And they also set the award schedules for individuals or businesses running those networks. Yeah.
Yeah. And what if an Energy Web Foundation customer wants to run the nodes themselves? Are they held by the same or comparable staking requirements?
Exactly the same. So again, the design here is that the company themselves. It doesn't matter if it's some external company that's never talked to us. It doesn't matter if it's an Energy Web member. It doesn't matter if it's one of our existing customers. They are the ones that will need to stake tokens to even launch one of these things, and then they can set the other parameters. And again, I'd really encourage folks to check out the Energy Web X Light paper. There's a very specific walkthrough that shows enterprise customer using a tool to deploy one of these networks, and then basically what happens then with staking. And I also think we're going to show some screens here, so that should help.
So just an example, in your 24/7 example, let's say a company wants a network of nodes to perform 24/7 matching. The token has to be used in the following way. So first, they need to stake something like, let's say, 10,000 Energy Web tokens just to be able to deploy a worker node network.
Yep.
Second, let's say they want whatever 50 nodes to be deployed, and each node operator, which would be the staker, to stake 2,500 Energy Web tokens. And third, node operators, so the stakers, need to be incentivized to perform that work, which means that each node operator should earn, in this example, let's say 1,000 Energy Web tokens a year for performing the useful work. So this would be something like...
Look, I was just looking while you were talking through it, Daniel. So yeah, just to recap again, in this specific example, so 10,000 tokens for the company to deploy the network. Then let's say they want 50 nodes running, and each node operator to stake, what did you say, 2,500 tokens?
Yeah.
And then basically assume that each node operator would need to earn about 1,000 tokens a year to perform that work. Sure. So I think that totals up to about 185,000 tokens. And so that'd be for one network for renewable energy matching. And then on those assumptions, that means that that company would need to use about 50,000 tokens per year to award the operators of that solution.
Okay, I think that's a good example.
I think it is, but I should also add something. You know, this is going to take some time for these enterprises to learn how to use it. We'll talk, I think, in a minute about our thinking on, you know, our enterprise is actually going to have to handle Energy Web tokens, because that's a big sensitive topic. Mm-hmm. But also, you know, in the interim, we as Energy Web have a very specific line of sight to several use cases for these worker nodes now, before enterprises are doing this by themselves. So in these cases, Energy Web will launch multiple worker node networks to just prove how the concept works. And these will be the first networks that EWT holders can participate in. Because again, it's going to take some time before we can get a critical mass of enterprises deploying these things at production scale.
That makes sense. And then Jesse, you mentioned buybacks at one point. What's going on with that?
So it's built into the structure itself. Let's do this, Daniel. Can I use you as an example? Sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's just call your company Daniel's Energy Company. It's not very creative. I'm not a marketing guy, but yeah. Let's say you want to launch a worker node network let's use the same example to keep it really clear, that matches the renewable energy at that granular level in a way that can be publicly verified. Okay, what do you, as the head of Daniel's Energy Company, need to do in order to launch that network?
I need to stake tokens first.
Yes, but what do you need to do before you can stake tokens?
I guess my company needs to go and buy them first.
Exactly. Not only do you need to go buy tokens and then stake them for your company to even launch one of these networks, you've also got to buy enough tokens to pay out to the individuals and businesses who are running the worker nodes themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And if that worker node network is creating value for Daniel's Energy Company year in and year out, you're going to have to keep using those tokens to pay to these node operators that are running the worker node network. Yeah.
Yeah. And that means that those people who run the worker nodes need to go and buy Energy Web tokens because they need to use it to stake, right?
Correct. We have to have the node operators staking tokens in order to provide security for these solutions. Yep.
So then one question, do you assume that those enterprises will go out and buy Energy Web tokens?
I mean, some may, and indeed, there are a number of enterprises in our ecosystem that hold them now and can use them like this. But generally speaking, no. You and I have talked about this in previous events. You know, if enterprises have to directly manage a cryptocurrency, as a prerequisite to using a piece of enterprise software, that's not a great business plan.
Yeah.
Right? So instead, what we'll create is an experience where that we and trusted partners can just help enterprises basically pay in fiat and ensure that EWT are automatically purchased and powering these networks. We have quite a bit of experience kind of doing that. So again, that shouldn't be an issue. But I think for the example, it's really useful to walk through as if a company is purchasing these tokens, just to make it very real.
Yeah. So one question that just popped up, how will countries use this parachain and how can they plug into this easily?
So yeah, I would think less at the country level and more at the business or consortia level.
Mhm.
So look, some solutions and the worker node networks that are powering them, they might be country specific. I just gave an example, right? In Australia, where we found one solution that has 2 worker node networks. That will be very local, and that's not even a country level thing. That's a regional thing within one country. But then there's some other initiatives that are going to be more global, right? We're going to talk about in a minute, but the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Registry that we're building, that is a global use case that will probably have one worker node network supporting a global solution. So you could have one country with multiple businesses. You could even have one country with multiple consortia of businesses within that country, each running their own worker node network. So I wouldn't necessarily think about it at the country level. I'd think about it at the individual business level or at the consortia level.
Okay. Let's talk about global and local worker nodes in a minute. Let's just jump to Greenpost for Bitcoin. Could you describe again what Greenpost for Bitcoin is? And we also have Greenpost for Ceph. Could you also describe Greenpost for Ceph and how we are using them?
Yeah. So the simplest way to think about Greenpost for Bitcoin and the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Registry that we're building in partnership with RMI, they're new registries. I really would encourage, they're green-proof solutions, just to be clear, so you can map it to Energy Web Tech. But if you're an outsider kind of business person looking at these things, they are registries. And what the registries contain are proofs about how green Bitcoin is on one side, and on the other side, how green sustainable aviation fuel is. And for both of them, basically who's producing these green things and who owns them. Like that's the simplest way I can describe them.
Could you explain in 2 sentences? I just have a question here. What is a registry?
Traditionally defined, I mean, I'm not like a registry expert by any regards, but I mean, it's a place where if I put in my renewable energy hat, which I know something about, it's a place where the public can go to see, hey, who's created renewables and then who has bought them on the other side, right?
Exactly.
So in this case, it's not a renewable energy certificate registry, but it's a registry. So on one side for sustainably produced Bitcoin, basically what we've done there with Green Proofs for Bitcoin, Amy Westervelt on our team has been just hitting at this for a really long time now and has become an extreme expert here, basically on creating a certification where Energy Web will certify miners that meet specific thresholds, and they basically get a credential proving that they are using a certain kind of renewable energy, and all that data and information is tracked in the equivalent of a traditional registry, although we're using Web3 tech to power it. Sustainable aviation fuel side, basically that registry is focused on tracking who is producing sustainable aviation fuel, and then who's purchasing digital certificates that represent that sustainable aviation fuel. So that's what we're doing for both of those things. Yeah.
So that's awesome. Let's talk about Greenpost for Bitcoin for a second. I believe it was like 2 years ago when we launched the Crypto Climate Accord. Is the solution attached to the Crypto Climate Accord, or are those 2 separate solutions?
I would think about them separately. So we started the Crypto Climate Accord because we had a number of conversations with a number of Web3 companies, including some Bitcoin miners, but also is much broader than Bitcoin, trying to see if we could just get the broader crypto ecosystem to commit to decarbonization. And although there is work to be done there, Ethereum transitioned to proof of stake with a couple of upgrades ago. So that reduced their carbon footprint by 99.9%, which is awesome. And many other crypto ecosystems are already running on proof of stake consensus or others. So although we were really excited to launch the CCA, what became really clear really quickly was that Bitcoin was the network to have the conversation about climate versus any other blockchain ecosystem. And look, I see it every day that blockchain ecosystems are marketing themselves as the greenest blockchain out there. I mean, don't delude yourself. If they're running a proof of stake network or a proof of authority network, it doesn't use that much electricity. Bitcoin is the problem to solve. And so that's why, as you've seen from us, we're really focused on Bitcoin in particular, because it is the problem to solve in the broader crypto and Web3 space if we're talking about wanting to make sure that it is using 100% renewable energy.
Yeah. And then last week, I remember that we gave an update about Green Boost for Bitcoin. Do you have any other updates we could discuss right now? I know everybody's eager to get updates.
Totally. We're close. All I can say is that we're really, really close. We were talking about it internally the other day, right? This has been a marathon, and we are at mile, 23 of the marathons. We're very close to being able to come public and basically announce who are the miners that we've been working with, what is the final design of the certification scheme that we've been working with, et cetera. So we're very close. I'm going to be at the Consensus Conference next week in Austin if anybody's going to be there and wants to talk about it. But we're getting quite close. And again, just for the community to understand, nobody's done what we're doing here before. We had to build an entire certification criteria that both kept the kind of ESG and environmental community happy and satisfied, but then also was as inclusive as was feasible with the Bitcoin community, which is an incredibly hard line to walk. So it's been a very just sensitive process, and we're almost there, and we're really excited to talk about it publicly.
So how will Energy Web token be utilized here if we talk about those registries?
Yeah, I'll talk about both of them in parallel because it's actually going to be, So basically, these are both registries. They're both running on the Energy Web stack. What will be deployed, although it might not be deployed right at launch, is a worker node network for both of them. And in those cases, the worker nodes are going to be performing slightly different work. For Green Proofs for Bitcoin, the worker node network is going to be basically ensuring the accuracy of the verifiable credentials that are being given to the Bitcoin miners. We're going to be using some workers to perform some specific work there. And on the sustainable aviation fuel side, I'll probably wait to go public on that one because the team is going to actually come out and say, here's exactly how the worker nodes are creating value in the sustainable aviation fuel case. But conceptually, it's pretty simple. Both of those are greenproof solutions, and each one is going to have at least one worker node network supporting those solutions. Yeah.
And just talking about these solutions, do you feel like Energy Web solutions are still in a POC phase, or are we moving into a real world production phase?
I'd say now I find us engaging in far fewer proof of concepts or even minimum viable kind of products and more production solutions. Look what we just talked about. Green Proofs for Bitcoin, sustainable aviation fuel. Those are production releases that will be supporting real tracking and verification of these supply chains globally, right? In Australia, Project Edge, although on the energy market side, it is a trial because there are some things that would need to change in terms of how the energy market is regulated. If you put on a technology hat, that's running in a production environment. It's a production solution. So look, POCs, we definitely need to spin up some of those for customers we work with to test specific, not even technology hypotheses, but business hypotheses. But in general, for me, the team, as you know, Daniel, has to present a pretty compelling case for me to greenlight a POC because really our focus is on those production solutions.
Awesome. So I think it's time to quickly go to the marketplace visuals. So I am right now, I hope it works, but everyone should be able to see the marketplace in an awesome mockup. And this should be the marketplace zoomed in. So just for everyone, this is just a wireframe. Like it's not the final version, but it's just to give you guys an overview of how a marketplace should look like. And what we could see on the first hand is that it looks like an app store, right? So on the left side, you can discover, you see the active solutions, you see the worker nodes. And one thing that I really want to point out, Jesse, is on the first renewable 24/7 renewable matching, we see a global tag. So next to that one, we see sustainable aviation fuel tracing, global tag. But the third one, DER Data Exchange, California, I see a local tag. Could you explain us what that means?
Yes. So basically, and again, this is draft, so we don't know exactly how it's going to shake out yet, but it's definitely going to look something like this application marketplace. Global and local is really important. So We see opportunities in some cases to deploy global networks of worker nodes that are basically performing a piece of work that we think companies can use regardless of what geography they're in. Example, 24/7 renewable energy matching. Different energy markets around the world, different regulations, et cetera. But if you really go down to the software level, the work that these nodes are performing in terms of ingesting data from a company and then basically issuing digital certificates that represent that renewable energy and matching it, it's pretty similar everywhere around the world. So the idea here is that some of these worker node networks will be supporting a kind of global use case. So that's why it says global. Sustainable aviation fuel too. The reason we're building that registry is because we're trying to be a global registry. Therefore, the worker nodes powering it also need to be global. But then some of the other solutions are probably going to be more local. So that means it's a worker node network supporting some sort of a local, in this case, we gave the example, I'm sitting in California. So what if we had a data exchange solution just for California? It's more of a local solution, and you're sitting in the Netherlands. Why would you want to support something like that? Why would the enterprises even care? So that's kind of that difference between global and local.
Awesome. So yeah, along the way, when we update the marketplace, we will share some stuff online as well, just to get feedback. So keep an eye on our social channels. And I think, Jesse, now it's time to talk about the roadmap. I know the community has been super excited to see the roadmap. So let me quickly pull up. So here is the roadmap. We see that the roadmap is divided in two different sections. So the first section is the enterprise roadmap, and the second section is the Energy Web X roadmap. Is that correct?
Yeah. And like the thinking here, again, for folks that have gone and checked out the Energy Web X white paper, that we published that really to help on the Web3 and crypto community side to understand what was going on here with these worker nodes in Energy Web X. But we also heard some feedback that was said, well, wait a minute, what's going on the enterprise side too? So that's why we split it in these two categories. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's go through it. On the enterprise side, we see Composer pre-alpha. Would you like to comment?
Yeah.
What is it?
So I'll just walk through. Yeah. You want to start on the enterprise side and then we can go to the EWX side?
Yes.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So basically, look, on the enterprise side, and some of this was not actually in the white paper we put out, but we can just do a quick voiceover on it, right? So Composer, that's just a tool that's really focused on helping to make it easier to launch some of these solutions, both for our team as Energy Web, but then also eventually for our enterprise customers. That's in kind of a pre-alpha stage right now that the team's using. In addition to that, we're really excited. I think it says, it should say digital spine toolkit. It might say digital spline.
Yeah, that's my mistake.
On mine. That's okay. That's okay. But anyway, so that should say digital spine toolkit. I'm going to not comment on that right now because that's going to be pretty cool when we go public with that. So keep an eye out. The next one is Green Proofs for Bitcoin. So again, we're hoping to have the production release of that registry imminently in this quarter. Yep. If we move down the line, we have another toolkit that we're just putting the touches on now about asset management. So that's one of our core solutions. And then we're hoping to have the alpha stage of this Composer tool. Again, Composer, something that's just used to help get some of these applications launched a little bit more quickly. Sometime around that same time of year, we want to launch the first version of the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Registry. So that's what you see up there, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, SAF. And then also looking at the 24/7 worker node matching and the first version of that, the beta version of this Composer tool, and then finally the more production version of the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Registry. So that's part of what's going on in the enterprise. I should say we didn't include everything here. We have a number of other kind of projects and support that's going on around the ecosystem. This also doesn't include any companies that are independently building on all of this, but hopefully that helps give a glimpse of what's going on the enterprise side.
Awesome. So let's talk about Energy Web X right now. I know everybody have seen it already in the light paper, but could you just quickly go through that as well?
Yeah, really quickly. So testnet's live. We have it producing blocks on Rococo right now. And then the marketplace, it's internal, so we haven't done any public releases here. And again, just to clarify, the marketplace are the screens that Daniel just showed. So that's going to look like for if you're an Energy Web token holder and you want to go stake against these different worker node networks and support them, that's more or less what you can expect. And that's in an alpha version as of second quarter. In the third quarter, we want to have a beta release of that marketplace. So that means it's actually working. These aren't just screens, it's actually software front end, back end that's doing all of this stuff. And then Playground, if you looked at the Energy Web X paper, Playground is the tool that we as Energy Web, but also enterprises will be able to use to configure these worker nodes. And if we do have any developers or folks that get hands-on with tech here, if you've experimented with Node-RED in the past for different applications, that's the idea, is it'll be kind of a drag and drop kind of user interface for enterprises to use to configure different worker node networks and then deploy them on the marketplace. So that's what Playground is. And then in the fourth quarter, we plan to have the mainnet launched, that Playground tool that I just described in a production environment, and then similarly the marketplace, because the whole idea is Playground is where you configure these worker node networks, and then they get deployed onto the marketplace for people to stake against them and support them. So that's, yeah, I mean, hopefully that helps.
Awesome. And then at the end of the roadmap, I can see deploy initial worker node networks. So that's also scheduled for this year, right?
Yeah, and it's intentionally, with the colors there, blurred between the two, because the whole idea here is that on the enterprise side, businesses are using these worker node networks to support real live solutions. And on the EWX roadmap side, we actually have Energy Web token holders staking tokens against these different worker node networks to support those applications. So that's what we're all working towards here.
Awesome. So yeah, I just want to spend a little bit of time to go through the community questions. And I really,
okay. Rapid fire community questions.
I really try to cover everything. So if you could just answer the community questions in 1 or 2 sentences, I really want to make sure that I get as many as possible. Okay, there we go. So question 1, there is a lot of FUD about the team and the founders. Any comments on that?
Couple of things. So one, I mean, look, during the bull market, the broader kind of crypto bull market cycle, everyone should remember that Energy Web chain validators, there were 0 controls in place compared to the ones now in place with the code of conduct. And that's in terms of minimum amounts of EWT that need to be held by validators, and tracking of movements and what those validators are doing. So look, the commentary, we are in a much better place now than we were previously without the code of conduct. It's actually working as intended. And I would actually thank the community for that, because that was an idea from the community and it is continually supported by the community. So you can see it, just go look at the dashboard, right? Which I know has had some bugs and some issues, but we monitor it internally quite closely. So I'd say in general, it's a little bit tricky for me to buy into that narrative that there's some rampant issue with the validators and how they're handling their tokens or acting nefariously. And look, on the founder side, you know, the founders have been here, how long has it been now? 7 years since 2016? Yeah, we're in 2023. And I'd really encourage folks, I mean, maybe even go have a look at the founder wallets. To my knowledge, RMI hasn't touched their founder allocation as far as I'm aware. We were working with them to launch the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Registry, and they remain deeply committed to our success. This talk of dumping and stuff, I'm just confused. Tokens from the community fund have been used to work with third parties to build tech, and then also fund staking pools. I think there were some comments they were being sent to the open market. No. We were chatting with Walter the other day, right? You know, Energy Web's not Shiba Inu, right? We're working with real enterprises. We're not in control of people's wallets or something like that. It's just, so anyway, I don't know. I hope that helps address some of the comments that are out there.
Awesome. So the second question would be, given the collaboration with Polkadot and the direction towards becoming a parachain, have you aligned with their intention to become a software and pass the Howey test? Enabling Energy Web as a utility service rather than a security?
I can't speak on behalf of the SEC because clearly lots of stuff happening there. But first of all, let's just remind, we went through a very similar extensive process with the SEC in 2018, and we were very public about this, conducted multiple presentations, shared with them in great detail what our mission is, how our technology works, how the Energy Web chain works, how it's governed, what utility the token has. And speaking very frankly, if you look at what we just talked through with the roadmap and how we're trying to use Energy Web token for these worker node networks, that is an order of magnitude additional utility for the token. EWT is already considered a utility token in Switzerland by FINMA, which is the Swiss financial regulator where we are regulated. We've really done everything we can that's in our power on this topic. So anyway, that's where we are.
Awesome. So next question, what happened to real cash flow mechanism? I think this is answered, but just again, what happened to real cash flow mechanism?
Yes.
Is this still in place?
I love that question, actually. So I think I mentioned it previously on this this session, but I'll just say it very briefly again. I am not aware of a public blockchain network that connects real world adoption of that ecosystem's technology and support and security of the token that's a part of that ecosystem. And so when you heard myself and Walter and other folks on the team talk about real cash flows, that's what we were talking about. Enterprise adoption of a piece of technology translating through to the health of that ecosystem. Yep. That's what we are doing with these worker node networks. Because think about it. If we can get different companies deploying these worker node networks at production scale in different geographies around the world, that is a direct one-to-one connection between launch of these solutions and the token and the security of the whole network, right? So that's what we're trying to do when we talk about real cash flows. Just to give another really specific example to describe the what we're trying to achieve here. If I am an enterprise and I've constructed a decentralized application on any of the other major L1s that are out there, the only way I have to use the token is for gas fees. So I could be running a multi-billion-dollar business, right, on one of those things, or a multi-billion-dollar thing, or a piece of software that's creating real business value in the tens of millions, and only has to spend like $100 on the token for gas fees, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what those other ecosystems are trying to do in terms of bridging that gap. If anything, this is what we're trying to do.
Awesome. So should this be a moment for Energy Web to patent the tech? That's another community question.
So by regulation, forget about it. We open source is in our blood. It is in everything that we do. That's why we're conducting these releases. The whole vision here is to open source our software to make it so that everybody can use it in every energy market around the planet. So you're not going to see those kinds of patents coming from this legal entity.
Is or will Energy Web token or Energy Web X be dependent on Polkadot? And what if this negotiation part doesn't work out? Is there a plan B?
Well, I don't know what negotiation necessarily is being referenced there, but we have to win a parachain slot if we go after that, if that's what people are talking about. Yeah. So, I mean, look, yeah, we have many different plans. The point is that Energy Web X is going to be a parachain, and we can connect it to any number of different relay chains if we need to. So Polkadot is one option. We definitely have other plans in place. And look, this is not the primary thing that's preventing us from moving forward, the selection of a relay chain. We just presented our roadmap. We are talking about these worker node networks that, by the way, are already running in a production environment. They're just not connected to Energy Web X right now. So no, the dependency on a relay chain, of course, we are moving forward with what we described in one shape or another.
Next one. Will Energy Web token be used to secure the Energy Web X chain, or now is it DOT that will secure the Energy Web X chain? I'm just wrapping up the questions.
Yeah, it's all good. So Energy Web token is used to secure worker node networks, right? We just talked through that model. That's where the magic happens. The security of every worker node network, and by extension, every application that is being powered by that worker node network, is a function of the Energy Web tokens that are used to stake and secure it. Yep. Now we can take a second order question, which is, well, if Energy Web X is indeed connected to an existing public relay chain like Polkadot, yeah, then there's an additional almost like wrap of security around the entire concept, right? And that will mitigate and protect against some, but not all kinds of cyber threats that these solutions may face. So again, primary point of the security here is about Energy Web token at the worker node network and solution level. And there could be additional value that is created if we connect Energy Web X to one of those existing relay chains that are out there.
So the next one would be, could you say how many and who are the validators that have joined in the last 12 months, and how many who have left Energy Web?
Daniel, I think you were doing a little bit of analysis on that. Can you take a look at that, or some combination of the dashboard? Yeah.
So 4 new validators, including new members, joined. So Queenbrook, one is to be announced, and we have some existing members like Stadswerke, Klagenfurt, and Terna Energy. We have 2 new validators in the pipeline. So one is to be announced, and the other one is GPEX, so the Japanese exchange something. 6 left the community. So it's Community Electricity, Fohat, Bloxmove, Alo City, Elo3, and South Pole. And 50 members renewed their membership, and we are having 11 new memberships in the pipeline. So yeah, let's go to the next one. Jesse, can you elaborate on the cooperation with Aventus?
Yeah, it looks pretty simple. We're really excited to be partnering with Eventus on bringing Energy WebX live, as discussed here. We'll conduct some more formal communications on this point soon about our partnership with them, but they've been awesome to work with. It's great to see another shop active in enterprise adoption of Web3 tech. There's not many of those out there, so it's been great to work with them so far.
Yeah, and I can add to this that we will be inviting them once we have formal communications to on a behind the scenes event to talk about what we are doing together and how the tech should
Nice.
look like. So the next one, could you provide clarity to the Energy Web community about the way green worker nodes and Energy Web X functions compared to the earlier consortia relay chain and watchtower idea?
Yes, so this entire worker node network model that we talked about today and that we open sourced a few weeks ago, that is supplanting kind of the original consortia relay chain and watchtower concept. But conceptually, they're actually quite similar. And to just map some language, whoever asked this question is very deep in Energy Web, which is awesome. Basically, instead of this original concept of watchtowers, we use worker node networks. Watchtowers were basically just observing stuff happening on other blockchains. What we found out was, well, wait a minute, we don't need observation. We need really specific work to be performed by nodes. So that's why we went away from watchtowers and came to these worker node networks. And then the other piece is, as we went deeper and deeper since that first consortia relay chain announcement, we just found out that most companies in our ecosystem don't need a blockchain. They don't need their own blockchain. We use blockchain for some very specific functions, anchoring DIDs, tracking verifiable credentials. We need a blockchain to track all these token movements, right? But like businesses do not need, in my opinion, although this may be a controversial one, energy businesses do not need blockchains that are just generic, right? They need specific tools to solve specific problems. So that's why we kind of backed off of this vision of a bunch of different parachains being leased by these different companies. We just didn't find any instances where they needed that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are.
And Energy Web X is the example of something they need, right?
The worker node networks powered by Energy WebX, yes. And that's why I said I'm so excited about it. We have so many instances where energy enterprises have this combination of something needs to be publicly verifiable. And in order to get that, sensitive data needs to be processed in a specific way. There are lots of instances in the energy sector where those requirements exist. And so this worker node technology, again, anchored to and secured by Energy WebX, is the answer to that.
Yeah. So the next question is, when will Energy Web Token get an integration with Ledger Live? Is that in the pipeline? And I actually do have an update. I
nice.
need to check for the update. So Ledger allowed me to communicate. So yeah, we have been working with Ledger for almost, let's say, 1 to 1.5 years to enable EVMs and Energy Web Token on the Ledger Live platform. So all we can say is that we are really in the last phase of the integration process. So again, we worked, I think it is around 1.5 years to make this happen. And we are now close to being live on their platform. But yeah, Ledger is in charge. This is the comms that was approved by them. So this is your update.
Nice, exciting, excellent.
Jesse, I've just seen a question coming in from the community. Jesse, you mentioned AI on the event with Canary Media. Can you tell us a little bit more? Is Energy Web experimenting with AI?
A lot of our solutions are going to be powering other solutions that use AI, would be the simplest way I would think about that. I mean, the business internally, like I have been asking people on Slack saying, hey, are there different ways that we can use some of these new tools for things ranging from, graphic creation to making it easier. For example, could you use a AI bot to make it easy to construct these worker node networks? So we are looking internally about how we can use some of these tools, but I think the real action is going to be about applications that sit on top of our solutions. If you look at the data exchange solution that we use for DERs, we're creating an environment where it becomes really easy for these distributed energy resource companies and utilities to put a lot of data into one of these worker node networks and then have some work be performed on that. What if some of that work was using some of these third-party developed artificial intelligence tools, for example, forecasting what the energy consumption of the day ahead is going to look like. Or maybe there's another use case for what if all of that data goes into a piece of work that is trying to find the optimal dispatch of all of those different assets. That could all be informed by different companies that use artificial intelligence. So I'm sure it's going to happen. And I see the big opportunity on these data exchange solutions. If you think about that architecture, lots of data coming in, it's trustless, it's privacy preserved. What can you do with that data if that becomes the scrape, for lack of a better term, for these AI models? That could be really powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about it and tracking it. Yeah.
Awesome. So the last question, you've been to a couple of events and consensus is around the corner. What do you expect to achieve there?
Yeah, so reach out if you're going to be there. One thing I expect is to meet people. I love meeting people and hanging out and talking about all things energy transition and Web3. I'm kind of expecting two things. I am on a panel with some other folks talking more generally about ESG and crypto. You can expect me to try and cut through the noise and be very loud about we have found a real use case, and it's not, tokenizing or taking, a bunch of random stuff and putting it on a blockchain. That's what you can expect from me, is trying to tamp down some of the narratives that are out there right now about how blockchain is being used and really talk about how we're using it as energy web. And then the second thing is I'm on the hunt for Bitcoin miners. So we're really pushing more to get more Bitcoin miners involved in this Green Proofs for Bitcoin initiative. Texas is kind of ground zero for a lot of Bitcoin mining activity. So I'm hoping to, have a few drinks and talk proof of work and talk about renewable energy while I'm there. So
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
So Jesse, thank you so much for the updates. I think they were really, really helpful. Everyone on the line, thank you for joining the third behind the scenes event. And yeah, so that's it. If any questions are answered, feel free to ping us on our socials. I know Samo is somewhere moderating, so he is somewhere in our channels, and we are more than happy to answer open questions. So thanks everyone. Have an awesome day.